Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is the Man Alone YouTube channel. I'm Man Alone, and today we're going to talk about solo RPGs, which I would love to talk about them all day, all night. Specifically, we're going to talk about a comment that had me thinking. I got it earlier today, and I've been thinking about it throughout the day. First things first, this comment is not offensive. I'm not like pulling this comment out to clap back at the author. Um, it did upset me, but it didn't upset me in a way that they like said anything mean or bad or anything like that. It upset me because it gave me that feeling of being sort of misunderstood, and it made me defensive. And I know that whenever I feel misunderstood and defensive, that is when there's something valuable there. There's some sort of lesson there that I don't want to take or I don't want to learn, or maybe it's something that I don't even want to admit to, because whatever it is, I employ the most like childish of defense mechanisms, which is like denial. Right. And then, rationalization, and then, ad hominem, like, well, who are you to say this? What do you know? And at the end of the day, it's like one of those things where it's like, just take the note. Like when somebody says something you don't want to hear, it doesn't mean they're all right, that everything they've said is right. It doesn't mean that everything they've said is wrong. They've given you a note, and so you take the note. So I've been like working today to take the note of this comment and see what it means and sort of talk through it, I guess, here, just to give some of my considerations about it, because maybe it could be illuminating or it could suck. Who knows? Let's get to the comments so you stop wondering about it. So I did bloop this person's name out. Again, this is not a bad comment. I just didn't want anyone to feel embarrassed or piled on. But they said, man, that's me, really enjoyed the Inquisitor's logs. Those are old playthroughs that I did very early in the channel, where I superimposed like 40K Inquisitor role onto the Star Trek Captain's Log solo rule set. And I did about 3 of those, and they were actually really, really cool. Like, I like the premise of them, but things came up, and I get really excited about things and move on to things. It's a double-edged sword, right? Because that's like one of my favorite things about myself, but it's also something that can be frustrating when you feel like, you're not able to settle on one thing. But I really enjoyed the Inquisitor's logs. I wish you would do more. It's full of action roleplay, and the system falls into the background. Contrasted to your more recent actual plays where the system, meta commentary, and combat seems to take center stage. So when I read this, at first, I started to have a reaction that I'll have sometimes when there are certain comments. It's never from anybody who is like a enduring fan of the channel. For some reason, those individuals they feel like, it feels to me like they've earned the right to give feedback. But like, it's always somebody who does like sort of a drive-by just demand of the channel or of me that like makes me just be like, who the hell are you? Right. Like sometimes people will just pop on a video and they'll be like, yeah, great video. Yeah, next one, go ahead and just kind of cut down on the exposition and make the character creation about half as long. Thanks. So it's like, what? I'm not like, I'm sorry, I don't work for you. Like, who the hell are you? This is a Wendy's, right? And I think that's like something that it bothers me only insofar as like I'm worried about the human race when I see certain comments, right? I'll be like, oh my God, like AI is just going to crush us. If this is our vanguard, like, geez. But they don't really get to me or anything. They don't make me feel upset or anything for more than like a flicker of a second, because it's like, I don't know this person and they don't know me, and I'm just like someone in a box. I look like somebody in a drive-through that you just like sort of order something from and move along. And And so at first it this comment felt the same, where I was like, well, that's good for you that you like that. Um, but maybe other people don't like that. And more importantly, and I know this sounds selfish, but it's true. Like, what if I don't like that? Right. Because, I'm very happy to get some support from this channel, right? A couple $100, which is great. Feeds this terrible, terrible, dirty habit of solo play all the time. But I'm not, this is not my profession. It's kind of, funny money when it comes down to it. And so I'm not at the point where I feel sort of like beholden to anybody, where it's, when I say jump, when you say jump, I say how high or anything, but I want to make it a pleasant experience for everybody, but I need to make sure that it's enjoyable for me, or else I'm not going to feel like making these videos. And I've tried to make YouTube channels in the past and I haven't been able to do it because I didn't enjoy it. And it felt like a job. And so I was like, I'm going to do it this time. I'm just going to make it stuff that I enjoy. And if that works for somebody, great. If it doesn't work, great, fine. I'll just do it and have fun. And so I started having those kind of reactions to it. But then it started making me feel defensive in a way that I wanted to like explain myself. And that is where, whenever that feeling comes, I've learned, and it's taken a long time, but I learned to what I would call just take the note, right? Like there's some sort of note there. There's some sort of wisdom, or there's some sort of truth here that is uncomfortable, it causing some friction, and you're afraid of it because maybe it will require you to change. Maybe it will require you to say that you're a hypocrite. Maybe it will require you to come to terms with like something you've been trying to treat as insignificant and it turns out it is significant. Whatever it is, there's something that's causing friction, and I'm saying no to it because it's like, no, I like how things are. I don't want to hear that there's any different way I could be doing them because this works. And that's partly true, right? Like that's partly true. But there is a piece to this comment that I think is not only valid, but valuable. I do playthroughs differently, and there are reasons for that. And I don't know if this would be interesting, but I thought I could talk about a few of those. The first thing is that solo playthroughs are on every solo channel. I swear, if I ever went to like a meetup for people who make solo role playing, I think this is something a lot of us would agree on, is that solo playthroughs are the most requested form of video and the least watched, at least on a long enough timeline. Okay. So for instance, and I don't know the numbers now, maybe these numbers now will make me look like an idiot, but I did a fair amount of Dragonbane playthroughs. We can never tell how many because there was a session 0 and I kept skipping numbers, but I think it's about 7, right? Which is pretty, consistent, especially because, solo playthroughs aren't like the main thing. Some people, that's their channel. Every video is a solo playthrough. For me, I like to do a little of this, a little of that, a little of the other thing, right? And so I did 7 of them, and at the time, it was like the first video was 1,500 views, and that was the session 0. And the session 0 is always 1,500 views because especially people that are new to solo play, they're really excited about the possibility of it. They're really excited about that blank slate. They really want to get going, and they say, you know what, I'm gonna do a campaign, but first let me see how somebody else does it, right? And that's great. Like, I'm very happy if I'm ever able to be that first stop. And then session 1 goes down to about 1,200. And I'm sure it's more now because I had a lot less followers back then, but it would get down to like session 8 would be like 123 views or something in that same amount of time. And it's not that I was like, oh, this isn't worth it, I'm trying to build my brand or whatever. That's got nothing to do with it, right? I do enjoy it. The thing is, though, is that while I often do say, and I stand by on this channel, that you do not have to be a rocket scientist for sure. You do not have to be a creative genius. You do not have to like play and enjoy solo play, but doing it on camera and having to, especially where I employ little or no pauses. So I'm just talking for like an hour. It is mentally, you're tired afterwards. Like it's draining. Right. And so, that's part of it, is that I really have a lot of fun with it, but I do have to like build up some momentum to do it on camera. And then when I'm done, I mean, you could ask BB, I'm like flattened, like I'm tired. Sometimes I have a headache because you're just talking and you're also number crunching and you're also doing all these things that when you're alone, you could just kind of like take as much time as you want. Hell, if you're playing alone, you can open up your book, get started, and you're like rolling up the first stats. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, cool, this whole thing on how agility works in this game. And then you read that for 40 minutes and you go, oh yeah, I got to roll my agility, right? But when you're on camera, I can't really do that. So it is some level of investment. That does not mean that it's a bad investment. It's an investment, right? So that's number one on sort of a personal side of it. And then number two is when you see that decrease in numbers, I make the content I do on this channel for me and for you and for us. And so when there starts to be less and less people that are watching it, it feels like, hey, are people having fun? Are you enjoying this? Do you want me to do something different? Should I move on? And there's less of that dynamic interplay there because, again, most people, and it's okay, but this is nonetheless a fact, even if it's a little uncomfortable to talk about, is that most people who want to solo play, unfortunately, do not solo play. And that's a big motivator for me on this channel, is to get people to solo play, because I think it's extremely rewarding and I think it's very fulfilling and I think it's a great hobby and it just makes my life so much better, and I want to give that to others. And so when I see less and less people viewing it, I'm just connecting with less people here, and maybe this isn't connecting as much. So that's part of it, right? It is the most requested, but over time, the lowest watched. And in some ways this makes sense, right? Like if I were to be like solo playthrough of Mutant Year Zero, session 19, wonder what's in this giant abandoned building, versus like Wizards of the Coast said, what? Right? And so I don't really want views that way. Those are like low quality views. That's like, a small bite of steak versus a huge plume of cotton candy. I love cotton candy, but I don't think there's much to a bite of it. And so that's a piece of it. And it also is what I would say something that people like to imagine themselves doing, and it's harder to stick with that. And then in addition to it being most requested, least viewed, on the other hand, it's like some of the most engaged though. So that's another piece of it, is that not as many people love playthroughs, but those who love them really, really love them. They really, really love them. And I think that for those who really love playthroughs, the ideal playthrough would be what every if you interviewed 2,000, we interviewed 100 adolescent males and asked them, what is their favorite type of makeup that a woman wears? I like it when a woman doesn't wear any makeup and she just looks natural. Okay, so it's like, well, she's wearing makeup. She just took so much time and applied it so well that it looks like she's not wearing makeup. And so you then also thinking after all that effort that she's not wearing makeup. It's like, and so I think in the same way, they're like, I like a playthrough that you can't really feel, you can't, there's no system, you know, it's open-ended, or the system, you know, like this says is like the system is falls into the background, and it's not up front, and you don't have to keep being reminded of this system. Like, I'm playing with the engine of this system, but I'm not reminding about it. And I actually do understand that. Now, to that point, that game was being played on Star Wars Captain's Log, which is a trimmed version of the Star Wars core game. And it's not an exact copy, but it's also very similar to Ironsworn, Starforged, and very early on in the channel, and very early on for most solo players when they discover this hobby, they do a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse type gameplays. And PBTA games are very narrative focused, right? They are about making moments, and they're about having your progression in the game measured by like strong or weak hits and misses, so that you're always kind of like having these complications and making small left turns, and the combat is much more abstracted, and it's narrative based, right? And it does at times feel like the person playing it is just like telling you about a movie scene, which I think is incredible. I mean, that's truly a credit to that kind of system. As a player, and I know this, I've spoken to a lot of people that solo play a lot, that system becomes less and less interesting over time for yourself, right? Because I'm not a person personally. I'm not a person. And I think this is why I don't like journaling solo games as much as others, is that I've never been a person that has a difficulty conceiving of novel thoughts or descriptions or scenarios, right? That's not something that I've had a hard time with. And so when somebody's like, this game involves you summoning up different narrative scenarios and then determining what happens next, you know, that's not something that's very different from what I normally do or what I can normally do. And I'm not trying to say like I'm gifted, because God knows, you ever seen some of my videos trying to explain rules of games that have a lot of crunch, I stink. But that's not something I struggle with. And so when a game asks me to do that, it feels like I'm getting homework, right? Like playing a 1,000-year-old vampire felt like I was getting homework assignments. And I was like, well, I don't have the novelty or the delight in that other people would, because for me, I'm constantly going, why am I even playing the game? I could just sit down and be like writing a story. Whereas for other people, that's a kind of thinking that they do not have a natural tendency towards. They don't have the proclivity for it, whatever it is. And so having a system that guides them through that is really exciting, and it's really stimulating. But for a person that is already sort of oriented toward that convergent narrative production, it can be a bit wearying, right? And so because of that, as the channel goes on, I look for different games, right? And always knowing that like there's never, and I'll probably eat my words with this, you know, something will come out tomorrow that does this, but it's unlikely that there's going to be some meteorite of a solo game that crashes into Earth and it changes the whole game forever. It's more than likely that we're going to slowly evolve into like the new formats of this game. And I'm already seeing different ones emerging very nascently, so small that you could barely see it, you know, like different ways that people start using clocks in games, and different ways that people start using like not only the value of dice, but their sort of the 3-digit code call sign that they produce. These are starting to emerge little differences, right? And so I'm curious about that. I'm curious how to expand the game, how to expand the art form. And interestingly, again, I'm not going to call this person out, but this person who wrote that comment, they have on their YouTube profile. Yeah, I clicked on it. What am I going to act like I didn't? It's like people that act like when you go on a date with somebody, you don't like search for them beforehand. Yes, I'm going on a date. I'm not going on a date with this person, but they have something that I really like in their profile, which says like, I think that tabletop RPGs can be art. Right. And I think that's really great. And so for me, what is exciting about that art form is looking at like what's over the horizon. So then additionally, I like to solo play games, right? But solo playing a game requires some things off camera. It requires putting the makeup on so well that you don't know it's on, because to solo play a game in any way that's enjoyable for the viewer, you have to know how to solo play the game. And so what that means is that I have to read the book. And not only do I have to read the book, like if I was playing a game, if like I was going somewhere that had a GM and I had to play the game and I'm like, okay, what is this, a D20 roll under or whatever? I don't just have to competently know it. I need to know how to play. For my own sanity and also for the viewer's enjoyment, because otherwise I'm just going to be pausing. Or if I don't pause, I'm going to be going, let's see here. Was that this or that? And then also there's a thing that is an anxiety that I have, and maybe I don't need to have it, but I think it's an appropriate anxiety where I'm like, I don't want to mislead anybody about how to play this game. I see that not only as a disservice to viewers, but the disservice to like the person who made the game too, because I didn't feel like learning how to play it right. And then I'm giving a bad impression of it and people are going, oh, I don't like how that game goes. Right. And so, you have, and a lot of these are 300 to 400 pages. Any of them that are worth their salt are going to be at least over 50 or so pages. I mean, yeah, I can pick up a dozen of these like 10-page journaling games or 12-page map drawing games, and I can play those, but those in my experience are only pieces of games, right? They're not the whole game. And I think my opinion on that may differ with yours. That's okay, but if you're going to play a system, even a simplified system like Runecairn, is at least 50 or so pages, right? And so I have to learn how to play the game, and then I have to solo play it. And as much as I like to perform and I like to do that stuff, in the end, it is a little bit of a different experience, right? Because I'm playing it for people who I don't see. And I'm in a room and I'm doing that. And so I'm like alone, but also not. And so that creates an interesting and intriguing dynamic that at sometimes can be really interesting and sometimes can be very strange and de-energizing. It all just depends on the day. And so that's sort of, my defensiveness. I tried to take my defensiveness and put it into some sort of productive dialogue rather than saying the defensive notion that comes up right away, which is like, you don't understand like the competing, I don't want to say pressures because like I have pressures of this, but there's competing motivations, right? There's so many different ways to get it right. And then there is a certain amount of pressure. Not that like, oh, what if nobody likes me? It's like, no. The pressure is like, I'm going to spend the next hour or even 2 making this video. And at the end, if I press stop and it's just doesn't feel good, that's it. Like that's that video, you can post it or you can not, but think about anything that you really take pride in and how you make. Like, I really take pride in my videos. And so right now, BB is making these beautiful, crocheting these blankets, and they're just amazing. But maybe that's something that you could imagine if you do anything similar to that. Like, you're making something for somebody for their birthday or something, and then at the end you look and you're like, this really isn't very good. Like, this isn't my best work. And sometimes that's okay, right? When you're giving it to like your coworker or something. But sometimes you want it to be really nice, and I really like all you guys. And so as much as I try to go easy on myself and say, hey, that's the best I could do today and release it, sometimes I upload it, it doesn't feel great, right? And so that is piece one of that. And I guess the final note that I would say is that, let me think. I want to think of the perfect way to say this. Okay, I think I've got it. Sometimes when you're trying to delight a large amount of people, you have a choice. You can say, I know that 2,000 of these people are really going to love this. I'll do that. Or I think that not only 2,000, but 4,000 people would like that, but then 2,000 will hate it. And sometimes with playthroughs, what I've found is, because it is a more niche group that follows those beyond session 0 and 1, I think a lot of those individuals that really like those are very serious solo players and very serious tabletop players, and I have a lot of respect for them. And I want to make videos for them that are really cool, and I want to make videos for myself that help me to play, but I think so sometimes I'll try to appeal to everybody, and it will sort of water down the product. And I think that that's what happens sometimes with solo playthroughs, is that somewhere along the line, I was like, yes, I would love to just go and, roll dice and keep going with a story and not get into the weeds about this system and this map or whatever. But some people don't want to hear that. And so what I'll do is I'll put a little something for everyone. Like, I'll do a solo play, but I'll also talk about how the game is played. Or I'll do a solo play and I'll give a meta commentary on what the game means to me, or might mean to might mean. Or I'll do a solo playthrough and I will do a review of the game, or I'll do a rules overview. I'll do a review. I'll talk about the system. I'll try to read some of the player's book, because it's like, if you're not into it for the solo playthrough, I still want there to be value. And the value that I chase most often on this channel is getting people to solo play. And so for me, it's like in every video, whenever possible, I want there to be some piece that helps a person who is reticent to pick up a solo RPG. I want there to at least be some piece that helps them, motivates them, inspires them, encourages them, gives them ideas, gives them tools. And so, yes, the solo plays can become more disconnected from the players, from like the player characters, right? Like, maybe I'm not as immersed, but I am also helping people who are new to it see what it's like to work through different solo play scenarios. And so I don't know if that's the best choice. I don't know if I'm looking for feedback on that. I'm wondering if maybe this is just something that I need to experiment with, and I need to figure out what works best for me in the end. I think it's probably an alchemy of all of those things. But please do not misunderstand me for I'm giving you my defensiveness right now. I'm giving you that in a way that is what made me defensive without being defensive. I'm not feeling defensive right now. I'm explaining where that defensiveness comes from. And the other side of that is the note, right? And the note is that people are out there that really love my solo play. And they love how I embody characters, and they like how I do dialogue. And in a lot of ways, I think once you clear aside all of the chances to be offended, as there were been a lot of that lately. There was I made a post a couple days ago on 5e, and what was motivating that was I was at a store that usually doesn't really have a lot of tabletop games. They're more like a wargaming store. And all of a sudden I saw like all these RPGs, and I was like super stoked, and I walked over there and they looked cool, right? Because what's the first thing your eye tries to figure out when you see RPGs? You're like, okay, do I see anything beyond D&D, Pathfinder, and maybe there's like one other one that might be in that mix from time to time. And once you see something besides those, you like are like, yes, awesome, I might discover something new. Because, dude, RPGs outside of those have the weirdest distribution habits. Like every once in a while, I will read all the sites. I will stay up on all the listservs. I will watch videos on like countdowns of the new tabletop and indie and solo games that are coming out. And then I'll just be in a store and I'll see one and I'll be like, where the hell did this come from? I've never seen it in my life. And it's like, oh yeah, we just got that in the other day. It's from some guy in Chechnya or something. And you're like, what the hell? Like, where did this come from? And so I walked over to that stack and immediately I just saw the dreaded like 5e on all of them. 5e compatible, 5e compatible, 5e compatible. And it's just my heart sank. And I was like, man, that happens so often. And I had, this notion of like, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this because it's not what this video is about at all. But anyways, I had the thought of like, wow, the internet loves to criticize Wizards of the Coast and everything, but they are pretty much passively like supporting the continued existence and hegemony of D&D as the de facto base reality system. It's an underdefined criticism. There are plenty of people that play 5e compatible stuff and haven't bought D&D Wizards of the Coast anything in many years. But I sort of categorize it in my mind as like something like lobbing some smack talk. Not exactly that, but if I was like, could you tell that I'm a real sports fan? I liked a different sport or a different sports team, and I kind of slung some mud. It might have been a little too leaned too heavily and call people pay pigs is not very nice. I didn't know that was such a mean phrase, but now I do. But some people really got their feelings hurt by that, and they wrote the big rage quit unsubscribes, which I'm always like, you could just unsubscribe. You don't gotta give your final bow, or I guess you will. But the point, which I am rapidly losing my grip on here, is that I cannot be every kind of player, but I need to focus on the positive feedback piece of that, which is that this person really valued my solo play, right? And so if you think about it, there is like two ways to interpret something like that. the first way, the childish way, is to say, who are you to tell me what to do, right? Like, you don't, I'm like making this video and uploading it. You're watching it for free. So why do you get to say anything? On the other hand, it's like you've created something that somebody likes so much that they want you to show them more of that. And that's really nice. And also, I don't know if I can or if I should, right? Because it's just things change. The nature of the channel kind of finds its groove a little bit, and it changes. And there is some like sadness in that for me. Once you discover what you like and what you're good at, it doesn't mean that other stuff you like and are good at like goes away. And it's an interesting thing, I think, and maybe part of growing up is being able to recognize those moments where something from your past, and I'm not saying solo plays are like my distant past, but something that you used to do and used to enjoy, you've sort of gone a different direction and invested yourself in a certain direction. And then part of going in that direction means that perhaps not that it's impossible to do those things anymore, but that it's just you don't have as much time to do that. And it makes me sad because I would love to, I'm that extrovert. I would love to give something for everybody. I would love to give something on this channel for everybody, but I can't, I can't. And so my appeal to that commenter, anybody who feels this way, that's a space right there. Like, you're not alone in feeling that. And so if that's something that you crave, other people are going to crave that too. And so that sounds to me like a really, really good opportunity for you to share that. And even if you're not great at it, a lot of people would like to see you exploring that journey on camera, right? They would like to see you figuring out what's the trick here. How do you really immerse yourself in play? How do you make the rules sort of melt away so that it's just like the feelings and the sights and the sounds and everything like that? Because I'll dip in and out of that from time to time, but I'm never, I'm never, nor is anybody, all things all at once. And so as this channel continues to grow, I just wanted to take a moment to recognize that, is that I do have time. I do have time. I'm so very happy to have time to consider everyone's opinion. But unfortunately, like in this life, I do not have time to act on all of it. And also that those things are still there and those things still exist. And that also the cool thing is I can go and float back into that when the time comes. And I think we are going to have some more solo play as things come up, especially as I'm releasing my Dragonbane supplement and my Year Zero supplement. I'm going to want to dive into those on the camera. But I hope that all of you will take that as a rallying call as well. It's like, if you really want something, you kind of volunteer yourself, right? And we need there to be lots of different channels that are offering this stuff so that we get more and more people into this hobby and out of the other ones. My God, there's some terrible hobbies out there. Anyways, I hope your hobby is not catapulting skunks or anything. I hope your hobby is solo play, and I hope this was some sort of value to somebody somewhere in the sunshine. Bye-bye.